forgot.
Yeah, for this thrilling episode, this bonus episode for the month of November, where we are talking about Watchmen.
Yes.
And we are focusing this episode on sort of strictly, on the Watchmen comic, the 12 issue, often bundled together as one giant graphic novel,
I thought we were just
by
going to
Alan
read.
Moore
I
and
thought we
Dave
were just going to
Gibbons.
read the book to them. That's all we're doing.
Oh, this is I'm sorry. This is an audiobook performance of Watchmen, done by two people with about 36 characters.
Here, let me do the first panel in the movie voice of Rorschach.
You know,
Dog carcass in the alley. This morning, tired thread on birth stomach.
You know, we're going to talk about the movie, obviously, as we talk about this, because the movie is trying to adapt this book, this 12 issue, multifaceted story into a 2.5 hour film. But that casting, I have to say, was not terrible casting. Jackie Earle Haley as Rorschach, he fits the bill. He's short. He's got a gruff voice.
He looks like him.
He's acted well in other movies too. Yeah, he does kind of look like him. He's been in other stuff where he was pretty good. But he was also, I guess, the new Freddy in the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and that you know how great that was. You know,
I don't even know, but
exactly.
Well, I'm sure I have thoughts on the Rorschach's performance in the movie, but I just thought we I just wanted to make fun of it right at the beginning here. But if you don't know what this comic book is, or graphic novel, or piece of literature, or amazingness that Watchmen is, you really should go read it. I mean,
Yep. It's from the 80s. It's from 1986. They started releasing issues of it. It's 12 issue series released through DC's subsidiary thing called Vertigo. Vertigo was the place where you'd get lots of not just adult comics, but they were more serious storytelling. I guess it was different than just watching than just a Justice League comic or something. It was meant to be more in depth. I think they did a Constantine series as well. Vertigo is still around too. It's a in-house kind of imprint of DC Comics. But yeah, this has got two of the giants of graphic literature, Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. And I mean, we can talk for days about just those two's contribution to comic books. But I mean, this book, this thing as a whole, is, I mean, it's probably, you could probably consider it one of the best novels ever written. You'd put it in in the top, I don't know, 100 or top 50 of just novels written.
What's it say in the back of the book here?
One of Time Magazine's 100 best novels, winner of the Hugo Award, groundbreaking, a brilliant piece of fiction, a masterwork representing the apex of artistry.
I love USA Today.
The greatest piece of popular fiction ever produced.
Yeah, but USA Today they just use the word groundbreaking.
Yes, well, that's USA Today. You remember, it's the paper that they can't give away. You know, I will just point something out. The last comment there, you see that the greatest piece of popular fiction ever produced. That was by Lost co-creator Damon Lindelof, who did the Watchmen series.
Yep. Yeah,
that's the same guy.
That. Yeah, that's awesome.
So, nice little piece there on this reissue. I think this one, I don't know, it came out in the 2000s or the
it came out when the early 2000s. They came out right when the movies came out. I mean, at least that's when I started seeing it. Unless they read.
Oh no, I got this before the movie. This was a gift to me, and in mine you can kind of see. I have a little inscription in the very beginning here. I don't know if you can kind of see.
Nice. It's like a yearbook
written from my friend Jackie. This is one of the best gifts I was given by it was I was graduating and I was going to be leaving Oswego, and this was a going away present. It was because I had never read it, and she was just you haven't read this yet?
Oh, okay.
And just put it in my hands, and I was here. you must read it. And
Well, that's the thing. Like, I mean,
it's awesome.
so the show is going to be an interesting one because we really didn't want to go through like plot by plot. We're going to talk about plot points and all that
Of
stuff. But
course.
this is such a, I mean, it's a heavy book. You know, it's pretty. It has some girth to it. You know, it's like.
You're right. We're going to just be waving it a lot at the camera too.
No one's going to hear it.
So,
But I mean, you could go like you know, before we started the show, we were trying to figure out how we're going to do this episode because the Watchmen, well, not the Watchmen, but Watchmen. I mean, there's just so much going on with this graphic novel. Like, I mean, you could probably spend an hour in each chapter, like, or maybe like 30 minutes or so in each chapter, which there's 12 of them, so that'd be a long conversation. Because each panel has like something to say about it. Like I think we were gonna record this a few weeks ago, but then we kind of held off on it because of reasons. And we spent like 30 minutes just talking about it anyway. Like,
yep, yep.
So
it's hard not to like. It's so huge. Like it's so like the scope of it is just so enormous, and I think I mean it's a very rewarding piece of literature, right? Like it's the kind of thing like you read it once and you're like, wow, okay, like that was pretty cool. And then you go back through and you read it again, you're like, oh my god, that
yep,
connected to this. And
yep.
then like the third time you go through, you start to see the tiny little strings that have been drawn in from the very first couple panels.
I gotta do the third time. I gotta finish my
But I
second
mean,
time.
it there is something about like looking through this. About it being like such like a panel driven kind of comic too.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of the big like splash pages of like, you know, like one person or like one scene. There's a couple of those, but even those get like split up by panels too. Like the idea of like the panel itself is always there. Like
when you do get like the big panel though, it's like it hits you way more. Like I think there's only
very
like a few
subtle.
and there's things at the end of the book obviously we'll get to, but like those panels, man, they just like smacked me in the face when I first read this thing.
It's a subtle way to like make those moments stand out even more, make you remember them. Yeah. I'll give you a couple because I have a couple pages flagged, but like the first like kind of big one you get is Dan Dryberg sitting there after his conversation with Rorschach and like kind of contemplating, and you see his night owl costume in the background. That's like the first kind of larger image. And then the other one I wanted to say is I mean, I don't have to like show it or find it, but like it's Dr. Manhattan walking in Vietnam when he's huge, when he's you know, a giant. Just like walking through.
Segue to the movie for a second because they tried to do that scene. They tried to do that scene too in the movie, and it's just horrible. It's
how like, cheesy it came off too.
Yeah, like I mean, like I don't think they did. Like I'll be honest, like I feel like visually they did Dr. Manhattan sort of right. Like he looks like Dr. Manhattan, right? He kind of gives that essence, and that one. But like they don't. It's not just him standing. They have him like marching and shooting laser bolts and stuff in the movie, and it's like
blowing people up. Yep.
But like so that was the thing with this show we wanted to kind of like touch on because I rewatched the movie for this. I did get through that. I don't know if you ever did. You finish it? Did you?
I did end up finishing it. Yeah,
okay.
I did.
You almost gave up.
I did it. I did it in the light of day to make sure I didn't fall asleep. Because God, it's boring.
Yeah, but like I remember when we talked about this just to kind of we're not going to give this movie too much spotlight, but it is fun to kind of compare the two and like how could you have made a movie about this book? Like that's kind of like the big question, right? And I remember we first saw it, both of us. Like you were more the Watchmen fan than I was. I was reading it as it had come out. I think I just finished it or was almost finished with it, and I saw the movie, and then I went and read the book. I'm like, oh wow, the book is way better. Like, yes. But like we both like we kind of like just gave it a pass for some reason. Like we were like. I think both of us did, right? We're like, I get it. Okay, sure, they made a movie. I see why it was made this way. And yeah, that was like kind of our opinions.
It was definitely more of like because for the longest time, and I don't know, maybe we could argue that it's still the case, that like this book, if you were going to do this book, it's kind of unfilmable. Like it's too rich and multifaceted, and it's too much a piece of literature because of just like as we talk about, like the title of the title of each issue, as well as like the end panel that has usually like a song quote or like a quote of poetry or something at the very end that kind of like caps the issue, and then you like are like, oh, like those are words to think about as you move on and think about like the next issue. Whereas like, how do you recreate something like that in the movie? In the movie, they try to by just playing the songs where the lyrics came from, and it came off just terrible. It just came off as like a really terrible '80s soundtrack.
It was awkward. Like the songs don't work for the scenes. I mean, like when you read those quotes in the book, because there was like 2 or 3 I think maybe 2 Bob Dylan quotes, and those always stuck out to me because just like you read them, and it just everything. It almost just like it helps you connect the whole thing you just read. It's like, okay, I get it. Like that's a good little summarization. That it's kind of cool. They do that. It's like they took like almost it kind of creates a theme for that whole chapter. Was that quote? It's kind of like, I mean, we just did a Quentin Tarantino movie. It's like him sort of representing all of his scenes based on music, right? Like everything is all based on the music first, and then he makes his movie. It doesn't work if they're using the quotes of the music. It doesn't work. It's not going to make a good film if you just throw the song in there. That doesn't do it right. That doesn't, like, how could you have done that better? Like, how could you have made that better? Like, I think, and I know we're kind of jumping around, but like, I almost like wonder if like could have added those quotes into the dialogue and somehow referenced it in some way, and maybe like make it more of a secret. Like, well, I know that quote, because I know Bob Dylan, or like it's like kind of more Easter eggy.
Yep.
That might have helped, but you said it's like having like each chapter of the book has that quote and like sort of a reference to the person that did it, and that almost even adds to that too. So like, how do you put that in a film? It's like,
I think you're onto something though when you're saying like it should be like in dialogue. I think some of these words you need to put into the characters' mouths. Like I mean, because some of them aren't song lyrics. Like at the very end, like the penultimate, right, the second to last issue, when you find out like Vite has already, or Vite, excuse me, Vite has ignited or has sent the creature, and it's already done. And you have a brilliant like last like couple panels of just everything fading to white. And it's the quote from Percy Bysshe Shelley's Ozymandias. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Like you can't do that in a song. You could have him like the character of Adrian Veidt like actually like whisper it or something. But yeah, you have to kind of like put those words someplace else than just like background music, because people hear the background music of like All Along the Watchtower or The Times They Are Changing, especially that. Like it felt like a 30-minute opening to the movie with God. That playing the entirety of like the long version of The Times They Are Changing, and it's like, oh my goodness, like
so
you're not giving me enough here.
And so back to the comic for a second. So the comic itself, like what makes this comic amazing, and that's one thing with I reread I didn't do, and I think you're gonna have to help me with, is that there's so much like backstory and like kind of information that's given to you in this comic, because that's the one thing that's like I think blew both of our minds. As you're going through the pages and the end of each chapter, you get like a book to read. It's like you got Under the Hood, or you got like some sort of article or some sort of file or something like that. It's like a little like, I don't know, it's like a murder mystery thing that you're going through here, like because you get all these documentation that you have to read to help fill in all the gaps, to help you understand it, because honestly, like reading the book, like a lot of the surprises, you don't know, you need that information, you need that kind of data, which is kind of interesting because I just read that last chapter of like Veidt getting information and getting data, like to understand.
Looking at all the screens.
Yeah, like
Mm-hmm. Haven't you just wanted to try that since you saw that? Like I've always wanted to be like, I wonder what I would see if I just had a bunch of TV screens on.
Just to comment on that, it's like it's funny because it's like he's like do you want it on? He's like, I put it on random. It's like he has settings for his information gathering. It's like random, cycle through for like an hour.
Every 30 seconds, cycle a different channel. Like Yeah, very specific instructions for how he consumes like what the what public what the people are feeling.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder.
Um, but
Go ahead.
no, I'll just say like those those things at the end. At first, I remember like coming across them. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, okay, taking like a quick like detour. All right, we're getting this person's backstory, but because these characters are all brand new, like they're not like Superman, Batman, like you're familiar with them at all. It's like you're reading a brand new novel that happens to deal with masked vigilantes.
Yeah.
Um,
Which
like
you.
my like Kristen when she first started reading it, she was very confused until these like little end pieces. She
Mhm.
felt like those were like really the glue that kind of like held the story together
Well,
because
yeah.
it like answered a lot of the backstory questions that she had.
It's all the
Uh,
origin. It's all the origin stories.
yep.
You
So
know, it's like.
it was much easier to like understand them in context because she kept saying, and I think a lot of people maybe their first time like reading Watchmen would have this kind of like complaint, like they feel like they're not in on something, like they should have already like they should already know something about these characters before they read it, and that's just the way that Moore and Gibbons have kind of written it, though. It's like it's just dropping you right in the world, and like you're slowly like the veil is going to be revealed, and you're going to be able to like fully understand. But you are kind of like dropped in the middle of the story,
Yeah.
and you're kind of swimming to see where you're going and who's
But
who and
I
what's
think
what.
that's the appeal. Is like
Hmm.
you know, it's like you to kind of touch on the overall plot. I mean, you start off with a murder of a character you don't really know, right? You think, oh, he's a superhero. You know, he must be a good guy. I feel bad for this guy. But you realize he's an asshole.
Yep.
You know, it's like you start learning this guy's an asshole, but you still the whole time really want to know who killed him. It's like
Hmm.
it almost like, and then all of a sudden that whole reasoning kind of fades away. Like you know, like yes, that's the reason you started this journey, but all these other things start happening, and it's like it's all of a sudden like you get so many different mysteries just kind of piled on top of each other. You start getting
Yep.
context. You start kind of, and I think I made it like a little little murder mystery kind of going through this whole book. It's like you know, it's like you're trying to understand everything, but then you start forgetting that you started a murder investigation to begin with, because you start.
Yeah, I know because the story just takes you in a completely different direction, and you're like, "Oh yeah, the comedian died. Like, who did kill him?" And like the story is, it's almost like them telling you like that's not as important as why he killed him.
Yeah.
Like, who killed him is like important, sure, but like why? Like, it's because he's tying up like the last loose end too,
Hmm.
and that's how Veidt like says it at the end when he's like revealing his master plan. He's like, yeah, the comedian was the last person that I really cared about, you know, who knew what I had planned,
I
and
did
I
appreciate
love that
that.
he
Like
decides to personally do it.
he also was trying to find the hooded justice, I guess, at the end too. That's one thing I just noticed as well. But he just like
Yeah.
it's like I couldn't really find him though, so I just settled on the comedian. That's like kind of what he
Well,
said.
it's not that he settled on the comedian. The comedian like found the island, right? Like he had discovered the island and thought it was like
Oh, I bet like this is like
another.
part of his journey of like he was telling his like his origin
Oh, how
to
he
his.
like sought out hooded justice,
Yeah, but
like
it's
the
like,
originator.
and you
Yep.
know, to when we get to that part, like our next part when we talk about the show. But I thought that was interesting, like 'cause they just like constantly reaffirm, like, yeah, we don't know what happened to him. There's no reports. There's no proven
Yep.
evidence. You know,
Hmm.
it's like, so.
We don't know who he was to begin with, and we don't know what happened to him.
Yep.
And it's like, in that kind of situation, all the person needed to do really was just take off the mask, and then they're not hooded justice. And because he never revealed his identity to anybody,
Yep.
which, as we will talk about, makes the show so interesting and cool.
Yep.
Uh, but yeah, it makes reading this again very interesting, kind of like rereading the hooded
Yeah.
justice parts, you know.
Mm.
But back to the comedian. Um, yeah, you like very early on. I think in the second chapter, you get his like you find out about what happened between him
Was
and
that in the? Is
Sally.
that in the hooded uh the book? Is that when that all? That's all in that section?
He does, I think. No, I think in the second chapter he does mention like the comedian in the first one, but he calls him just like a brutish thug
Okay.
and like any. But I think it's in the second chapter where he actually in the end of that, where Hollis Mason, it might be like the third chapter of his autobiography, where he comes out and says like, I saw him, or like I know that he tried to sexually assault Sally Jupiter, or Silk Spectre, and I know that he's considered a hero in some circles, but to Hollis Mason, he's like reprehensible.
Yeah.
But I do like that Ozymandias is like, I like hearing about their first meeting, because he chooses, of all the people that Adrian Veidt has to like kill or eliminate or move out of the way, including Dr. Manhattan, he chooses to go and personally murder the comedian himself, because like on their first meeting, he's like, comedian recognized me when they were like out patrolling or something. They meet out in the night, and he was like, comedian recognized me, still attacked me, and then feigned like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were a villain. Like, so there, and he loses to the comedian, maybe on purpose, maybe not. It's kind of vague. He's like, I studied his limitations, skillful uppercut, very good feint, and but not much else.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, next time I would be ready. And this is all like, it feels very personal to Veidt at the same time. It's like, that's his like tiny little bit of revenge, and that's the thing that Rorschach is like keyed in on. So, like, someone killed the comedian, might be a mass killer.
We kind of got like we got stuck on Veidt like really quickly here, which obviously because he is a pretty amazing villain. I'll have to give him that. Like, he's pretty awesome. But here's the thing I like noticing as I'm reading it, because I was finishing that chapter when they started to like the Rorschach in Night Owl or Daniel Dreiberg. They start figuring things out. They're working as a team again, right? So like they're trying to figure everything out. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, because I remember when I read the book the first time, I had no idea it was him. Like, I was just like, oh, it can't be him. Like, why would it be him? He was attacked, and then like, it's like, what else? But I'm just like, but I'm reading the comic book this time through, and like, granted, I already know the answer. I'm like, he's the only one makes sense to it to be, because you've been shown no other person. Like, no one else could be that person. Like, what other shocking thing could be the bad guy? Who else could be that answer? Unless the comedian was still alive, and I think that'd been cheesy, right? Like, who else could have been the villain? And the second as they're starting to figure that out, I think that's when the reader starts like to care about that again, I guess, because there's a lot of things that happen the like 4 chapters before that where you must forget, like, you don't care who the killer is anymore. You don't care who's pulling the strings too much. Like, you do, but you're always like throwing like some sort of distraction by going to Mars, or
busting Rorschach out of prison,
learning about Rorschach, which is a really interesting thing as well. Like, there's so many other things. Like, it's like you go from, oh, let's do this journey, but then you start learning like the faults of all these characters that you just met. Like, so it's like you start like really wanting to know more about them, and then all of a sudden you go to Mars, which is a really crazy thing to begin with, and you're focusing on his whole thing of like saving humanity, like because they're not worth it. Like you, and that's the thing where I say like each chapter could give so much information. Like, you have this whole perspective from Rorschach, which is seeing like the horribleness of society, right? You got Daniel Dreiberg, who kind of has like sort of like done the whole like seclusion thing. Like, he just really like he tried to just avoid all of it, just kind of look at birds.
Yeah. He retired and just kind of like fell into his obscurity. He quit. He quit when they outlawed it. He didn't fight back, and Rorschach was the only one that like fought back against it. And it feels like, I don't know, reading this time, I don't know, like Rorschach's kind of like why he starts thinking that there's like a conspiracy against like masked heroes, a masked killer, or somebody who's gunning for their old fraternity. It's like it's almost like, if you have enough conspiracy theories, one of them is bound to be right, because he's just like filled with all these crazy thoughts and ideas.
He's so focused on it.
The world.
I don't think I noticed that as much, to be honest. Like, it's weird. I think it's just the climate of politics we're in now. But maybe I see it a little bit more.
Conspiracy theories, people taking them seriously,
but if we
just
want,
coming up
since
with them.
since we're kind of jumping around with characters a little bit, like Vite is great, like you said, his thing, but you don't really get how great he is until the end. That's like the nice thing about Osmond. He's just like sort of like
So
there, right? He's just like kind of just shows up once in a while, and you're like, oh, some Egyptian dude. He seems weird.
he's very like altruistic. He's very like kind and gentle, and it seems like he's the best of them. And I got to tell you, like I'm thinking he's more like a Tony Stark, Bruce Wayne kind of figure because he's loaded, has access to all this technology, is
Sure.
like incredibly smart himself, and it's almost like Moore and Gibbons are saying like, no, if you had somebody of like Tony Stark's capabilities or Bruce Wayne's capabilities, this is probably something they would try to do. They would try to save humanity from itself. They would
Hmm.
come up with this scheme to like end all crime, to end all like war.
Yeah.
Instead of just
It's
like
like that utopian,
fighting weekly battles.
the
He's like, no,
utopian
no, no.
dream.
Let me think ahead. Let me see what I can do to try and like solve this
Well, yeah,
problem.
because he says, it's like solving the symptom. It's not solving the problem, and
Exactly.
and it kind of gives me like essence of like, I guess Thanos a little bit, the extremities of it. It's like you're never gonna stop people from like like I mean the MCU where he just like, well, let's get rid of half the people, so then there's
Hmm.
no more problems anymore because no one's fighting over stuff. A little more dumbed down answer, right? But
Sure, sure.
but I mean, a Vite's like, yeah, like you have to do something extreme because nothing's gonna change. It's just gonna keep doing that normal cycle. Um, but
And it's crazy that he specifically picks something that's insane, right?
okay, so
Like a
let's
trans-dimensional
just
being
let's
dies
I want
on
to
it.
I want to circle back to Rorschach because I have thoughts on Rorschach. But
Oh,
let's talk about
okay.
let's just talk about the creature. Let's talk about the creature.
Oh, okay. You want to just talk about the creature,
You're
just
bringing it
how?
up. You said it a few times already. Let's talk about the creature.
Okay, we can talk
Um,
about the creature. It's ugly. It's cool looking though. At the same time,
but
it
here's
was
the
it
thing with
was
the creature. Like it's like it's out of left field. Like and rereading it, like they show it to you. Like I
yeah.
never noticed that before. It's like you just
They
kind of
like
take.
they show you a picture of the sketch from
Yep,
the artist,
yep,
right?
yep, yep.
And and then they do kind of like you do see like a couple I think like little glimpses of it like when they show when they go to scenes of the writer and her yeah the all the artists and scientists that like went missing and then you find out that they've been working on this secret project to
I think the people that are on the island, okay, the people that are making this crazy abominable monster thing,
yes
they think they're making a movie, right? Isn't that what
yes
they're
they think that
thinking?
it's like an elaborate movie project and like a film studio like it's secrecy it's like the budget and it's like they're probably all like separated just enough from each other to not know the full picture. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah,
probably don't all have all the information obviously. And like one of the things that I remember them saying, because they used like an actual brain
yeah.
in
When they're
like they
leaving, they
mentioned that
say,
they're like, yeah, they probably want to keep a hush hush because it sounds like they used like somebody's brain. It's like, yeah, I'm sure there's probably laws against that. That's why they're doing it on this island, this private island, and it's
like
like, okay,
it
like,
is it
well,
is interesting because yeah, because
they're paying everybody exorbitantly to do it.
I
So
remember the first time we were reading it through and like they show those scenes and I'm like I really did like I just kind of like sort of threw them aside. I started noticing things because obviously you have the pirate story, which I
mhm.
know you have love for that, especially certain scenes in that, which I think is awesome too because the way it kind of tells the story of what's happening in the world of the modern day world and have like kind of parallels and stuff. But it's
Mhm.
like you give hints of like the artist being missing of that comic, right? It doesn't really click too much. It's like you don't really. It's like why do they show this thing? Like I don't. Why are we talking about this artist? Like why is he important? They give you hints of like
Mhm.
oh the island with artists and things. It's like okay so he must be connected, but like
Like
no.
why? Why do I need to
Yeah,
know all this?
yeah, like
Yep.
what it's you're like okay like this, but we're talking about nukes. Like what does this have to do with anything? Like
Mhm.
and it's like when you turn that page, because like really like the last page when everything happens, right? The big white of explosion. It's like
Yep.
oh, the nukes went. Okay, it's a nuke. It's a bomb. Because that's why you push buttons. Is just to send bombs. And when you that first, I have to say that first page, that first like 6 panels of pages, those are the ones that really hit you. Those full page drawings of the creature, like those will be forever burned into my brain. Like I remember when I first turned that page and like started seeing the aftermath of that, I'm just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah,
and you know me, I don't usually swear.
You're right. It's like eight. It's like 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like realistically, it's 2 huge pages, right, of like seeing the death and destruction, and 1, and 2. So like right there, the first page of the last comic.
That one really gets it in my head. Like that one ingrained into my brain.
The detail with which you see not just like people dead, but the characters that you have been following kind of from the beginning too. All these side characters are dead. Like once you get to the second page, you see like, oh, the guy that was selling watches. You see, the woman that was crossing the street. And then you see the newspaper guy and the kid. You see the two ladies that were arguing, the psychiatrist and his wife, the 2 cops. Like you see them all. You see all these people like from the very beginning of the story.
The lovers on the wall, though. I think that's really fun. I didn't notice that before.
Yep.
Oh, that's so sad. Really sad.
Oh, I want to also mention, since the theme of clocks in this, the end of every issue has got like the doomsday clock, and it starts with 12 minutes to midnight because there are 12 issues, and each issue is 1 minute closer to the end.
Oh,
so from the first issue, you can see that it's like 12 minutes to midnight at the very end.
And I love it. Like this,
it's those, too. And that one is like
that. I love that. It's like the red kind of film. It's like the second you turn to that too, it's like, oh shit, like what's gonna happen now? And you turn the page, it's just death and destruction. And what really makes it so horrific too, I gotta say, this is like my attribute. Props to the artist. Is like they don't show the entirety of this creature. They show like a really close up. They show all the tentacles. Your imagination does the rest. And like that's all you need, right? It's all you really need for this insane thing. And like I remember when I first turned the page, because I think you had actually told me prior to getting to this point. You kind of like, I'm like, yeah, Paul, just tell me, what actually is the difference between the movie and the ending. Like I just wanted to know, because I'm just like, it's like, oh, there's this like, it's like, oh, he just sends this crazy creature and he kills a bunch of people, and I'm like, that didn't do it justice. Like when you like that, like that, like whatever you had said to me, it's like. When I actually finally got to that point, I'm just like, my God, this is horrible.
Like how could you like build that up to somebody unless you do it yourself, right? Like I can tell you, like, oh well, there's a giant creature.
Well, no, I wasn't saying I wasn't critiquing
no.
your.
I know. I'm just saying, like you can't, like, because it's so shocking and it's so out of nowhere. It feels, and like within the same breath, you had just learned that this character that you kind of trusted and thought was, looking out for humanity is actually, planning this mass murder. And not even like, I love this part, like Rorschach and Night Owl get there. They managed to get to Antarctica where Vight's, fortress is, his like Karnak, and they get there and with the hopes of like stopping him, and he's like, God, he's like, Dan, please. I'm not like some Republic serial villain. If there were, I wouldn't be telling you my plan if there was any chance of you messing up. I did it 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, I love that.
And I like, it's such a good part. Like that to me is what a true villain would do. Right?
And they show you like him push the buttons and stuff, and it's like, yep, we got a few things to do. He's so casual. It's like, yeah, they can't stop me. It's already been in work, so it's like I'm too good. And
like when he's doing it too, he's like, "Oh, there's no time like the present, I guess." Yeah. And like just goes and like presses some buttons on the panel. He killed his staff beforehand, and he's like, "Oh." I think he celebrates with them right afterward. That's when the celebration is, when he invites them for a drink and then poisons them.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love the art of that. I noticed a lot today because it's like you start. I think when I first read, I didn't notice they were dead. but like you start like paying attention to the panels of like the people that are drinking, their face look
Yep.
like this. All of a sudden, a butterfly is just like flat in its
Yep. Yep.
face.
It's like it's coming across. It's like getting closer, and then it's like literally on his nose, and you're like, why isn't that dude moving? Oh, they're all dead. They've all been poisoned. It's like, yeah. At what point did they get poisoned? Was it quick? Was it slow? But it seems like it didn't take much.
Yeah.
He's telling like his life story. This is like the second to last chapter is when you really get Vight's background too. When he talks about his parents dying, but leaving him a ton of money, but he gives it all up to go and follow in the footsteps of Alexander the Great, and wanting to realizes just how smart he is and how he can do anything if he puts his mind to it. He really does remind me of like those kind of like Tony Stark or Bruce Wayne, because he's very smart, and he's got like unlimited resources, and instead of making like a really cool car or a really cool suit, he instead makes a really enormous transdimensional tentacle monster to scare humanity into not killing itself.
Yeah, I mean, and good villains have good sound, like, not what he did with sound. I'm just saying, like,
He has the best intentions.
his reasonings makes a lot of sense. Like, it's not we were about to kill ourselves. You probably would have had millions of people dying anyway. It wouldn't.
Yep.
Would have changed the outcome. It's horrific. It's bad. It's a bad, horrible thing to see. But like bombs would have done the same.
Yeah, and it would have made the world uninhabitable. Like after a nuclear holocaust, like things would have been so much worse. And it's like, I don't know, like 1 million people die in New York, and that's it. That's the cost. But to save billions, right?
Yeah.
That's the black math right there. The hard choice that only he feels like he's able to make.
And honestly, based on the information given in this comic book, I don't know any other answer. I don't know any, because you don't have any help from Dr. Manhattan. That's for sure. Like, I mean,
that's true. I will give the movie some credit, and we can start. Maybe we can. This is a good chance to segue to Dr. Manhattan. But I feel like that was the best part of the movie to me, was when they did the background of Dr. Manhattan, like his origin story. So when he's on Mars and kind of narrating, because Billy Crudup is a good actor, and he plays that like ineffectual Dr. Manhattan voice really well, where even though it's very emotionless, there's still some emotion in there. Like there's still some.
I think they could.
You can kind of feel like his human nature is still somewhere in there.
I stopped watching around that part. That's where I got zoned out for a little bit when I watched the movie. I just stopped paying attention.
That's the most faithful adaptation from the book, I think, is that whole scene.
I'm sure it was.
That whole sequence.
I think something before that had already pulled me out of it. So I just and then I looked up. Sure. I'm just like, oh, that's right. I'm watching this movie. But I'm sure that was. I do remember like them showing him becoming Dr. Manhattan wasn't too bad. But like they don't do what it does in the book though, where it's like weeks and weeks and weeks of him reappearing and like and manifesting and like being a brain, and like it's that's like
just
creepy.
Like a nervous system like screaming like
ah!
How terrifying.
I love the muscle person just going rah!
I know. Like if he could make sounds, you'd be like wondering like, this hurts so much. Like, why won't it stop?
No, but like I said, Dr. Manhattan's like representation isn't it's pretty good. Like I don't know. I feel like they just they because it was the first rated R comic book movie we ever really had. Is that sort of? We didn't have a lot of them back then. Maybe Blade, I guess, was rated R.
The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren, I think, was rated R.
But like,
not good though.
Like I understand, like he walks around naked all the time in the comic book, but like they're really like even the comic book they cover him up to like not show his dick all the time. But the movie just like it looks so like it just like was so disturbing to me a little bit.
I don't know why I don't know. It was like you knew that they were going to do it. And then it was just like, okay, just show it already. Just like do it. We know you're going to do it. And when they did it, it was just like, that seems weirder than I would have imagined, but okay. And then it's like, okay, now you're just putting it in there for
Yeah.
show. Like
Yeah,
even
well,
the like you're right. Like even the comic was like, we're not going to draw a dick on every panel that
like
he did.
there's a point where he's just like sitting at the like he just appears somewhere in some couch and he's just sitting there as a
Yes,
newspaper, just like in the between like why is he reading a newspaper? Like
right. Like just need to catch up on the day's news.
it's
Me who
just
can see the past and the future in all times,
but
all at
it's
once. I just
predetermined
got to
though.
see what's in the
It's
news
predetermined
today.
though. He can't control the events.
Which is such an interesting way. If we're talking about the character, I like how like in some like if you take like Doctor Manhattan, think about other like omniscient beings from like Marvel or DC universe, like Galactus or what is it, the Watcher is
Mhm.
another one, like the ancients and stuff. Like they can see everything, they can see the past, they can see the future, and they don't interfere. And they're taking that kind of mentality with Doctor Manhattan, in that he can see everything, and he's like, yeah, and I'm not going to touch it because I can see what's going to happen, and I see what's happened before. But the way that they describe that kind of like knowledge, I thought was really interesting because it's like he can see the past. He's experiencing the past, the present, and the future all at the same time. So
Mhm.
when you're saying like, well, where are you now? He can say like, well, I'm in 1960. A lady is handing me a cold beer, and at the same time, I'm also being torn apart by the intrinsic field, and I'm also putting myself back together,
Yep.
and I'm also making a castle on Mars out of sand. You know, like all of these things are happening. So like when he talks to people, he's like, don't worry, we talked yesterday, and I'll see you in 20 minutes or something, and then just like walks through a wall
Well, because
in the way he like views
he I
time.
like when he's trying to explain this ability to do this with uh Silk
Laurie,
Spectre or Lori. Thank you.
yeah,
And there's one panel, and I didn't notice the first time. I noticed it today. It's like, well, she's like, don't you have memories? Don't you remember things? Can't you see
mm-hmm.
what happened? Don't you? We're all kind of connected into this like one. This one time is not one straight line. It's not. It's not. It's something
Mm-hmm.
that is just all around us, and it's like, and then she starts having memories through this conversation, and it's like she's remembering and almost like gets pulled back into that time. Like she is leaving
Yep.
her current time to witness memories and so forth like that. So it's like he sort of like experiences the future in sort of the same way. It's like kind of like visions, I guess, more than anything else. And like,
Mm.
but it's like a memory too, right? Like I think he's like remembering it and experiencing, but he's experiencing all three at once. Like it's this weird. I thought that was an interesting way to kind of explain it. It's like I can't change what this memory was because that's what happened, but to him, that's he can't change his future memory because that's what's gonna happen. He can't change it. It's just it's what it is. What it is. It's like you can't. You know.
Exactly. So when she's like, well, do something about it, or like when Kennedy was shot, and he's like, well, you knew it was going to happen. He's like, yeah, I did.
Hmm.
And when the comedian kills the woman in Vietnam, right, the lady who was carrying his baby, carrying the comedian's baby, and he shoots her,
Yep. He
and
does it too.
in Doctor Manhattan, like he starts like he's like, you shot her. I can't believe you like. Why did you do that? I can't believe you did that. And comedian immediately turns it on him, and he's like, yeah, I did it, and you watched. You could have turned those bullets to steam. You could have transported us to anywhere, but you didn't. You just watch. He's like, you're losing it, Doc, and we're all screwed because if you're going flaky, then we're all done
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Like I love that. Like the comedian's already from like Vietnam. Like, this is going to be a big problem for us. Like even in the midst of all this, he's like, yep,
So I
Doctor
do
Manhattan, not
I,
a good thing.
I do want to say something funny. I was reading the book today because I mean I just read the Doctor Manhattan scene with Laurie today, and it shows his gigantic castle, and I'm like showing it off his castle made on Mars, and all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden I just made this
Mm-hmm.
really weird connection. Elsa from Frozen is Doctor Manhattan.
Oh,
Okay.
she can make a castle from
She gets
ice.
exiled from her town and she goes into like a snow place. I just like you understand. Okay, I watched that movie a lot. I have two daughters. But like when
Just let it go, Justin. Just let it go.
but when I turned the page to the castle, I'm like, oh my god, Doctor Manhattan's Elsa. I'm like, well, he's technically no, Elsa's Doctor Manhattan. I thought it was a funny thing because it's kind of a similar story. But oh man, but I want to say something about the movie that was really bad in relation to that scene.
Okay,
And
please do.
well, because like you have that scene, her, like Laurie, kind of you're getting her backstory, like her perspective, which is crazy that she's 13 and looks like a 20-year-old, and then she's 16 and looks like a 25-year-old in this book. Like I don't understand that, but okay. Anyways, um, she has these memories, but she gets them all herself. Like she's the one that's doing everything. She's the one that comes with all the different connections. She comes with the proof that it is him. In the movie, he's like do that. She's like do the thing that makes me remember. And he like puts his hand on her forehead and gives her visions. And I'm like,
yeah, that was terrible.
I'm like,
Yeah,
why?
yeah,
You didn't need to
because
do that. You didn't need to do
you're
that.
taking like because isn't that like a mirror for what we're doing as we're reading it? You know, we're putting the connections and then we have like the aha moment, and it's like they were like, no, Doctor Manhattan used magic on her, like boop, there you go. Now you have your memories back.
Yeah,
It's
like I
like I
just
didn't
like
know that was something he could do.
but it really ruins her character in the film. Like, I mean, Laurie's character in the movie is horrific. Like, she's just
Yeah,
like
it's already
she's
in
just
deep
eye
shit.
candy prop and just does. She's just
Yeah,
there
it's
to deliver
terrible.
lines. You know, it's like, but like Laurie is actually a really interesting character in the comic book. You know, it's like
Yep.
she has a purpose. I mean, literally, she saves humanity a little bit by bringing Doctor Hammond back a little bit. But I don't know. Does he really? He doesn't really stop anything, I guess, either. But um,
Well, I mean, she does
she convinces him.
convince him that humanity like that there is something unpredictable and interesting about life, like the idea of like life itself, and that's what causes him. He's like, you know what? I've decided to, you know, he does kind of help because he does go to Adrian Veidt,
They all realize.
Karnak.
They just all
Doesn't
realize.
really change anything.
Yeah, he becomes
He
like
kills
friends.
Rorschach.
He kills
That's all.
Rorschach.
That's it. That's all he does. He's the only one that has the actual, the visible balls to kill Rorschach.
Rorschach has to be killed technically. Just do it.
That's true too.
Because he was going to tell everyone, so he prevents.
And that's the thing. Like he's the only one that when they're like, okay, he's like, well, here's Veight's like, here's the choice. He's like, you could tell everybody and ruin the peace that I've created, and you know, and go right back to World War III, or you can keep your mouth shut, and we can all enjoy like this peace, you know, and the world de-escalating. And he's the only one that's like, you're joking, right? We're not gonna keep quiet. And they're like, no, don't be a hard ass, Rorschach.
Everyone's got to know the truth. You got to, but
no. Even in the, as he says, even in the face of Armageddon, the truth must be told. Like, evil must be punished. And that's why Rorschach as a character is a very interesting one to talk about because of his mask, because of the black and the white, never mixing, never making gray, right? There are no shades of gray in his life. It's all black and white.
Yep.
That's what that's what he initially says when he sees the dress. Now that whole thing is partially based in real life too. The Kitty Genovese case of the woman who, yeah, that's all right. So, it took place in Queens, in Kew Gardens, and I forget the guy's name, but I know it well because I assigned this piece to my students to read. The article from the New York Times where this guy like basically wrote, the title of the article was 34 watched murder and did nothing. And he basically calls out all the people that saw this lady, Kitty Genovese, get murdered by this guy outside of her apartment building and didn't call the cops. Only one person called the cops. It was like long after she had already died, I guess. So it's funny that they use that real life story to inspire Rorschach to become Rorschach, and it
Yeah.
was her dress that she had ordered in the
Yeah.
new
No,
line
I
of
remember
Doctor
the.
Manhattan.
Yeah, I remember that. So that's the one thing too about Rorschach was the dress. I like that representation. Like it's just like a what? It's just a weird fabric or something that can move around
Yeah.
and change.
Yep.
But
Two fluids, but never mixing. Yep.
I didn't like the representation of the movie at all. It looked silly to me. I don't know why. I don't
There's
know. I
something
don't
about it being still, right? That works.
like. Yeah, I think you need to have. I know why they did change it because it does change in each panel. Like it's moving, it changes what it is. But
Mm.
I feel like maybe that's just something that you would overlook in film. Like you just like, okay, we're trying to represent this movie. It doesn't need to change all the time. Like, it doesn't need to be moved around. I think that could have been, I don't know, handled a little bit differently, but
Maybe it just changes a lot slower. Maybe so
maybe.
that because a lot of the patterns actually have like meaning. Like there's a couple of them that you can kind of see like shock on his face, and it
Sure.
like it registers as shock even though it's a mask.
I don't, I guess like that's the thing when we talk about like making it a film, it's like I feel like I get the importance in the comic book of it
Hmm.
changing. But I feel like in film you could still get Rorschach's character crossed and not having the distraction of just a cheesy looking mask. I guess I don't know. That's just I don't know what the trade off is there. Like what do you lose by just making it a normal just Rorschach mask and he's just known for being Rorschach that has a standard mask.
Hmm.
Like what I don't know I don't know the right answer there. But like I didn't like how they did it. I guess they did it. Maybe they just were trying to make it change too often, or maybe don't show it move. Maybe just like when every time it cuts to him, it's different. Like you know what I
See,
mean?
yeah, like so it changes slowly or it changes between scenes. So yeah, like
Yeah.
no, I'm
Like,
definitely with you on that.
or maybe just like
I
it shows it change one time, and then you know it now. You have the information in your head, and then whenever you see him, he's just got a different looking face. So it's like I think just the visual just threw me off a little bit with him. It like in the film, but
It's another like layer of nuance that the film couldn't retain from the books, right? And just
yeah.
like another detail that they tried to they focused on like, oh, it's cool, his mask changes and we'll make it change with stuff. And it's like that's not what's cool about it.
Hmm.
It's not cool that the mask changes. What's cool is that it is like a Rorschach ink blot test for us, you know? So like when we look at it, we're trying to figure out what Rorschach is thinking just based on what's on his mask. Like we're trying to read his face,
Hmm.
and sometimes you can read it, and sometimes you can't.
So so I
And I
said
think that's part of the
I
Rorschach
said
character.
I said I had some thoughts on Rorschach. It's not like wasn't deep. I just was trying to say like I don't. I guess when I read the comic book, you know how like you make inner voices of characters, like you just like okay that's my take on them like in your head. I don't know how you describe that. It's like you kind of give them a sense
Yeah,
of a
your own.
voice,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Like I don't see him talking like that like I don't see him being the Batman type of talking. I know they say he's monotone. I know
Hmm.
he talks in very dry, but like I just like he's too talkative to talk like that, I guess. Is my point.
Yeah, he's not growling as he's
Yeah.
talking. I agree. I always felt it was more like
Where's the one
stood in street,
page?
watched it burn, imagined limbless, felt torsos inside,
Yeah.
breasts blackening, bellies smoldering, bursting into flame one by
Well,
one.
like this,
Watched for an hour.
the one panel I'm gonna just represent is like when I actually thought that was funny. It's like when he's trying to figure out the password to get into Vite's computer.
Ah, uh-huh.
Okay, and it's like
Yep,
I like how they represent that. It's like they just like have him sit there and they just have him Rorschach just talk the entire
yep.
time.
So
You
you've
know,
got background noise while Dan is trying
yeah,
to hack
it's
into the
just it's just
computer.
it's just really funny because like he says a lot of words here, and I just can't imagine like also need motive why car operation wish to kill costume heroes controlled by some old enemy perhaps. But then he starts talking about like didn't like the thought of corpses interfered with, can't afford to be some squeamish disturbing dead our job need like he just goes on such long tangents. It's
Yep.
almost like he's talking to himself. He's not like talking in this deep. Like when I talk to
Oh,
myself, I'm not going to go. Well, I'm going to go to the coffee shop and watch my mail drop and it's like
No, it's like he's mumbling to himself because he's a crazy dude that carries a sign that says the end is nigh.
Yeah, he's just
he's just
talking.
mumbling to himself.
Yeah, like I don't know how you represent that in film to make it make sense, but like I don't I guess like rewatching it I just it threw me off. I was like I didn't like it. It was just like it kind of demeans his character a little bit because he's a smart dude. Like he's actually not he's crazy, but he's also smart.
Yes,
You know what I mean? Like
that's yeah. Like he's very much like a good detective. You know, so you do get that kind of like he knows what makes people tick. He knows where to like get answers. Like he's kind of like I don't know, like year one Batman kind of, right? Like so he's like down in the nitty gritty in like the worst bars, like punishing the underworld and putting the pressure on them. Like him and Night Owl doing that stuff up, like cleaning the waterfront up, like they were doing when they initially teamed up. Like I totally buy him doing that in the movie. Yeah, like it comes across as like he's trying to be Batman almost too much, and it just feels wrong.
and Rorschach's violent. Don't get me wrong, but like the movie makes him way more violent than he needs to be.
Oh, yeah,
You
like
know,
that
it's
opening thing where he gets into the apartment. He never gets detected by the cops. The whole point is he's stealthy. He gets in, gets his information, and leaves. And in the movie, he's like, no, he's got to have a fight sequence with the cop, knock him out, and then leave. So yeah, it's just like gratuitous
well,
violence. Whereas,
even the most violent scene I think that relates to Rorschach, at least the memory of the kidnapping.
yep,
It's like I
yep.
mean, yeah, that's violent, but like he doesn't like in the movie they take a chainsaw or like a hacksaw. He just like he does a slasher move on his head. He like kills him with a hacksaw in the movie. Like
Well, they show it. They show what they didn't show in this. Whereas like they in the book, I think
he
he's kind
just
of narrating because he's telling the psychologist the
well, he
story,
just
right?
blows it up
So
though. He doesn't actually kill the guy. He just ties him up. He's like I
oh yeah,
recommend not cutting your hands off. You'll
or yeah,
you don't
or
have
like
enough
yeah,
time. Like I mean, yeah, it's still horrific the way he does it, but like he doesn't actually do that like serial killer move. I'm just gonna blow you up. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm just
mhm.
it's not. Yes, it's the guy was horrible, but I feel like that's I don't know how to say it without saying that's a more anti. It's like a more her. I accept that as his response versus what he did in the movie. I guess they're both bad,
Yeah.
but it's
So like that whole sequence is kind of grisly too, right? So like when he hits the dogs with the cleaver
yep.
in the panels, like you don't actually see it, and he's kind of narrating it as it happens, and he says like I'll just read it. So he said like as he just like killed one of the dogs, one of the guard dogs. Shock of impact ran along my arm. Jet of warmth spattered on chest like hot faucet. It was Kovacs who said "mother" then, muffled under latex. It was Kovacs who closed his eyes. It was Rorschach who opened them again. It's like that's his origin story right there of like when he stopped being Walter Kovacs and became
Hmm.
Rorschach was that moment of like trauma and him doing something really terrible, killing a dog. I mean, it's violent and it's very bloody, but
And
but he
some
was still very much like affected by it. Like he said "mother" under his breath, like in fear and
yeah.
all those emotions, and then finally like his like I found what I wanted to do. Like I found who I want to be, and I want to be this.
Hmm.
And no,
Like
it's
I
you don't get any of that in the movie. You get just like the violence of it, and you see his silhouette like hitting the dog with a cleaver, and it's like, well, that doesn't really show me Rorschach's character. That just shows me he's a crazy dude with a cleaver.
I know it
So
does.
yes, you're right. It's a slasher film there.
Yeah, like I mean, you look at like Rorschach's like depictions when he has the mask off. Like you almost like sort of feel sorry for him a little bit. It's like it's like you don't. He's not this like crazy dude that talks crazy. Like he's just like he actually is trying to make friends. Like he just doesn't know how. Like it's so fun. I love Dan and him like trying to
Yes,
be buddies.
so weird. I love what like toward the end where he's like, Daniel, you've been a good friend. And he like puts his hand out to shake. He's like, I know it's difficult.
Yeah.
And they're shaking hands, and he's like, okay,
Yeah.
thank you, yep,
They do that so
that's
well.
good.
They show the
He like holds
awkwardness.
the handshake too long.
But no, I like this because we actually kind of went through all the major characters. Really, I mean, we talked about comedian, talked about Doctor Manhattan.
Yep. Talked about Silk Spectres. Well, Laurie is the one that really matters.
But like, yeah, no, there's so much more you could go on and on about this book, but it's so good. There's just so many good little, like, just especially now, like, you know, with like I said, like the climate we're in, it's like I think like even like you see it more with like just like talking about like just so many different like I guess like topics that you would like race or like you know uh just the horribleness of like the society and like it just like seeing the negative and not the good like it's just I'm kind of rambling here but man it was such a good time to reread this book.
It is, and it's I find something special in it every time. Like I even those like little like chapters at the end of the chapter. Like I love for the Doctor Manhattan one. It was like actually like from like a scientific journal like about Doctor Manhattan and like
well,
superpowers and the superpowers.
That's what I want to talk about. Is like rereading this time. I didn't realize when I read this the first time that how much technology supposedly has changed with Doctor Manhattan. Like I guess they're all driving electric cars now. Like that was one of the one of the phrases. Like I didn't even because like you're still. I take this as this is happening like in the past in the 80s. Like when I first read it, right? It's like, oh, this is not modern day times. This is a couple decades ago. But like the fact that technology has changed that much, I do find it funny that like the technology changes so much, but yet it doesn't have like I guess what the Hollis he tries to call Sally, and he's like, oh, I can't talk too long. It costs a fortune to call California. They still have by the minute phone lines though. I just thought that's a funny little electric cars, but you can't dial California.
Well, I mean, it's gonna cost him a lot because it's still long distance.
I know. Long distance went away a long time ago. Is my point. It was interesting how that I didn't realize how much Dr. Manhattan affected the technology of the world, I guess, and how it changed. And I love the alternate universe and like Nixon is on his third term, and there's just so many little things that like just kind of snowball. And like you said, are based on events. Like they just tweak some things. Like winning Vietnam changed like all these things that made all these things happen. And
I love that like when the comedian and John and Dr. Manhattan are in the bar, and he's like, we certainly won the war because of you. He's like, I think we would have gone kind of crazy if we didn't win this war.
Yeah,
would have been very different. And it's like, so like like the big like shift is like, what if we did win the war, and then like this is what happens. And I love the line like, really we won because of Dr. Manhattan, and it was like, the original line, or what did they say? Like, oh, the Superman is real and he's American. Like when they discovered it, it's like the guy Wally West or Wally, whatever, Dr. Manhattan's friend was like, actually, I was misquoted. I said God is real and he's American, and I always love that. It's like, yeah, that's basically what he is, but he's just like a god, I guess, would be, in that he's like indifferent. He's like, yeah, I know everything there is to know about you guys, and it's like watching ants.
Well, closing remarks, Paul. Anything you want to say? Anything else you'd like to
I would say
about?
Avoid the movie like the plague.
Yeah.
Because it is a plague on movies and people.
Like, yeah,
it's terrible.
Well, you said you're trying to watch it with a view of if you didn't read the comic, like with no history or information whatsoever. I feel like
you'd be bored out of your mind.
I don't know
how
bored
out of your skull.
Yeah, it's bad, and I don't know how I even like accepted it as being like decent, okay. Like I just, it is.
We just kind of we just let it be. We were like, okay. We were like, could you make this into a movie with like a beginning, middle, and end? And it was like, okay, you did it. You did it. Congratulations, Zack Snyder. You adapted another thing.
Followed all the plot points and story points, and did some of the scenes okay, and did the dialogue okay, but not okay, but
somehow
like,
managed to still fuck it up.
yeah,
But
I know. But yeah, we could probably talk
I,
for another hour on this comic book. I mean, there's so much to talk about and so much to say.
hey, Justin, I got an idea.
What?
Let's talk for another hour about the comic book and the TV show that came
That's a
out on
good
HBO.
idea. I like that idea. We should do that.
Let's do that. Do you have any closing things you'd like to say about the comic before we sign off?
Um, I don't
Did
know.
you like it?
Of course, I liked it.
Would you recommend it?
Of course, absolutely. Recommend it to anyone that wants to sit here. But like I said, don't. The one thing I didn't bring up is like I said, it is like a hefty book. But when you look at it, like when you actually pick it up, it's like, oh, it doesn't take. I don't think it's going to take that long to read this thing.
Oh, it's
You know,
dense.
it's you got to have like expectations set. Like you're in for a ride,
Yep.
and like you got to be. I wouldn't say you have to be ready. Like this book is definitely not meant for everyone. You know what I mean? I can't like you know what I mean. Like it's not going to be like, oh, here you can give this to your mom and they're going to love this book. But if you like comic
No,
books and you like
no.
science fiction and you like deep dive into like a very psychological concepts and conversation and deep thoughts, I guess is what else can you call it? Like just Dr. Manhattan's, like each of them have different little things that really resonate with like just thinking about the world. Like you have, Dr. Manhattan's whole storyline where it's about like, what is true purpose and meaning, and like, what is it like to become a god and all of a sudden just forgetting that people breathe. Like, it's like,
Yes, yes. When he brings her to Mars,
that was
he's
funny.
like, "Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
I
like
can't be expected to remember all these trivial things."
it's like it's the things that like a TV show tends to try to represent, like, with different type of character types a little bit, but they do it such a better way in the comic, because you got like the daughter that's like being forced to live her mother's dream, but there's reasons. You got
Hmm.
the conspiracy theorist because he had a horrible childhood and decided to, I guess, fight back. I mean, this is a very dumbed down explanations of it. It's just like there's so much, and then Dan Dragberg, who's I like, he's like the opposite of Ramses. He's like a rich dude that didn't know what to do, so he got bored and decided to fight crime.
See, that's like the non-nefarious Batman. He's just like, I just like the gadgets. Like I just like making stuff and
we didn't
fighting
really, we
crime
didn't really talk about
occasionally.
Night Owl that much, and he's actually a really awesome character, but he's like the goody two shoe guy, right? Like he's like,
Hmm.
but again, like they're not perfect, and it's the best thing about it. It's like it's showing that these people that would go around running around in masks and beating people up and fighting crime are not going to be the greatest people that superheroes are kind of deemed to be, right?
No, they're kind of screwed up for wanting to put on a mask to begin with.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of that, like, why do you put on the mask? And like that's part of like what makes Dan very special to me. It's also like how he gets off a little bit,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
He's like, and when Laurie asked him after they have sex, and she's like, "Did that make it better with the costumes?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's weird to say it out loud, but yes, the costumes made it
But you know
better."
what? Honestly, oddly enough, like it's a funny clothing statement that made sense. It almost humanized him more. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like
you know
it's
that was like, yeah, like him like finally like coming into his own and accepting it when he finally admits it to himself. Like, yes, I like dressing up like this and having sex while I'm dressed up. He's on top of the he's on, like, because right before he's on top of
oh
they
wait,
just rescued the people from
whatever.
the
Yeah, go
and
ahead.
he's on top of the owl ship, like controlling it from there, like singing Billie Holiday. Like
Yeah,
he's living the dream.
yeah.
He's like literally rocking out.
What is this like? No, I was gonna. This is my clothing statement. What does it say? Um, they just finished having sex, and it's like you sound like real passionate. I didn't know you could be a smolder. He's like, I'd hope tonight might wake something inside you, but it sounds like it's awoken with an appetizer. You're right. It has a big appetite. Insatiable, huh? Well, I'm open to suggestions. What should we do next? Let's go bust Rorschach out of prison.
I know. And then it's a panel of silence, and then Laurie saying, "What?"
It's like, yeah,
See, like that kind of comedic timing, they couldn't even get that down in the movie,
yeah.
right? And it's so simple, just like pausing for a beat. Listen, for anybody like who's kind of like contemplating, well, maybe I do want to see the movie. The movie is dark and drab and dreary, whereas this book is colorful and beautiful and well illustrated and full of compelling characters, and it feels much more like a movie than the actual movie itself. So with that, I can't give it any more higher praise than it makes you feel like you've watched like a cinematic adventure. You've just been watching still images and just reading.
Yeah, definitely go read it.
Brilliant, brilliant. But
I am glad we talked about this fall.
I think we should keep talking about it. Let's talk about the show next, dude. Let's do it.
Sounds good. Check it out in our second part of the Watchmen duology.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
All right, then. Goodbye.